And I'm going to start this presentation on case study. And as the topic said, it was classification of surface EMG signals. But for today's session, I thought let me go a little bit more on the feature extraction and dimensionality reduction, because this is where is a lot of our original contribution. And also would like to tell you that this work is along with my student, Smita Bhagwat of VIIT. So first of all, yeah. So this is going to be the flow of the presentation today with some block diagram, pre-processing, because we have focused on these three aspects, pre-processing, feature extraction, dimensionality reduction, and then given it for classification to improve the classification. We'll also be giving you some future directions and we can have some discussion on that also if anyone is looking for some problems in this area. I can also see many of my senior colleagues as participants. So I hope that this session is valuable for them. So basically our motivation to go for the EMG signals was because there are a lot of amputees, in the world, where are who 58% of them are actually below the elbow, which is called transradial amputees. And definitely this causes a lot of distress, and our work is actually towards the prosthetic rehabilitation of such people. This is the aim with which we went for to solve this problem and improve their functionality. So this is the background, otherwise, yeah. So the types of prosthetic devices which are generally there are upper limb prostheses, there are lower limb prostheses. So out of the two, we are working mostly on the upper limb prostheses because lower limb, yes, it's like support, it's always existing. I mean, it's needed, but we want to give more functionality in a upper limb prosthesis. So there are many types of these devices, passive, active, and in that our focus is on active devices, which is externally powered, which are with a battery pack. So, what are the requirements actually of these prosthetic hands? So, the requirements are it should be real time, so it should be fast, it should be intuitive, which means it should be natural, it should be dexterous, means all movements in all 3 degrees if possible. Then it should be robust to changes in fatigue, temperature, humidity, and definitely simultaneous control of multiple degrees of freedom in a natural way. So for this, we have worked on EMG signals and we have taken the surface EMG signals. As you can see that there are two types, invasive and non-invasive. So we have taken the data for surface EMG signals. We also created a hardware setup for collecting this data ourselves, but which was very noisy. So then we have gone on existing database, which is there, and our work is still continuing. We are still collecting the data from the amputees. So EMG signals, since it's based on biomedical this FDP. So just a brief introduction. Of course, EMG signal may be known to many people also here. So it's a muscle electrical signal which is generated from muscle contraction. Brain recruits motor unit to innervate muscles, and the resulting exchange of ions across the innervated muscle fibers produces a small electrical current called a motor unit action potential. So this potential, when you add all of that, it gives rise to the EMG. So what are the properties? Because when we go for feature extraction, when we go for pre-processing, dimensionality reduction, and finally for classification. So we need to know what type of signal it is. So it's a non-stationary signal, it's a real-time signal, it's a non-stationary signal, and amplitude range is 0.1 to 100 millivolts, which comes out from the electrode. And the frequency range is from 20 to 500 hertz. And it depends on age, it also depends on gender, though we would not like to differentiate between the genders, but yes, sometimes it is weaker in the female gender, skin type, etc. And it is contaminated by noise. So directly, I cannot take this signal and give it to a machine learning algorithm or to my AI system or for classification. It means I need to do a lot of pre-processing and then give it for the feature extraction module. So as you can see, these are in the PPT. You can see hand close. This is a movement: hand close, index, then index middle ring. So this is how the signal looks like. So this is the EMG signal for those who might be new to this area. So it's a basic block diagram. You have to acquire the signal. You have to pre-process. You have to do the feature extraction. This is very traditional approach. Why I'm saying traditional? Because currently we can go for deep learning, but we really don't have so much data for amputees. So pre-processing you can do, feature extraction, dimensionality reduction, you need to do that. So this is where our contribution is, or a major work, and then we give it for classification. And then you can do some post-processing. Of course, some intervention is needed, like post-processing. Little bit of that is needed because you need to give an accurate movement to the finger. So what are the existing issues? As I said, there is a lot of scope to work in this area. The database is a problem where you'd have, maybe you can take data from normal people, but we need data from amputee people to support them. Then
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Prachi ma'am. Yes, this is Chaitanya ma'am. Sorry to disturb you, ma'am. Actually, the tab bar at the top is hiding the slide titles. So
Yeah.
if we move it at the bottom, na, so slide titles will be clear.
Okay. Okay.
You are sharing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
sharing
Yeah.
that we can move at the bottom. Yes, yes, ma'am. It
Yes.
is clear
Fine.
now.
Fine.
Yes, yes, clear,
Okay.
clear.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yes, correct. So these are the existing issues. And as you can see, number of movements, how many movements you want to give, of course, from number of subjects that you can collect, then movement type. It's a hand movement, or it's a complete hand movement, or it's a finger movement. Then in the finger movement, it's a single finger movement or a multiple finger movement. And then number of electrodes, that's the number of channels. How many channels you want to use. Then noise is an issue, and selection and combination of these feature extraction methods, their accuracy, and computational time. As I told you that this is very important that they should do it in real time and there should be less computation. So we can't really go for very complex algorithms. So we need to go something which is faster. So we need to do dimensionality reduction and then we do the classification. So what are the data sets used? I would like to inform you that there is a researcher, his name is Rami Kushaba, whose work we have referred to, and this database is available on his website. And with only the request is that whenever we are using it, we need to give a reference to it. So all these, there are three types of data sets which are available, in which first there is number of electrodes, which is only 2. Then in data set 2, there are 8 electrode data, means it gets more complex as you can see. And then data set 3, in which there are 8 electrodes, but this is for amputees. So collecting the amputee data has been a very difficult task, and that we are still doing. We are also doing this task. Then there is finger movements. So I will be showing you what are the finger movements that we want to classify. So 10 finger movements, then 15 finger movements. You can also have, definitely for an amputee, there are lesser number of finger movements. So like 6 finger movements, but the force levels are different. So when you're collecting the database, you have to instruct the amputee to do the same movement with different force levels. And then, so number of repetitions, you can multiply all 3, you will get the number of repetitions. Then time for each repetition is 5 seconds. Sampling rate of this data is 4000 Hertz and resolution is 12 bits. And then analysis will be around 300 milliseconds or 250 milliseconds, which is, I think, not visible in this. Or just let me see that this bar, if I can reduce somewhere. Okay. So let me go to the next sheet. In this, as you can see, this is how we collect the data. Okay, so this is a 2-channel database, and are the 10 movements which we have classified, which we are trying to classify. So thumb, index, middle, ring, little, thumb index, thumb middle, hand close. Okay, so these are the different 10 movements that we are trying to classify. So in one case, there are 10 classes, in another there are 15, another there are again 6 classes with 3 force levels. So yeah, so this is 15 class data. So that's how the number of electrodes will change, and they are all transradial amputees or transradial data. This is a normal hand, and we are going to take this now from an amputee database. Okay, so these are the 6 movements for the amputees, and this is how the database is collected. As you can see, if we can actually, for the prosthetic arm, if we can correctly identify the movement, it will be improving the quality of life of these amputees. So this is a problem that we have identified, okay, and now we want to work on it. So what is the solution that we want to do? First, of course, as I said, noise is a very huge issue for us. So we needed to pre-process the data. So in that, wavelet transform is very useful for denoising the EMG signal. It's a very standard process of applying wavelet transform and then denoising the signal. So they are very standard steps. Noise sources, white Gaussian noise is there, colored noise is there. So there are movement artifacts. We have to understand that there are different types of noise will be added as we're taking the measurement. So there are movement artifacts, the person is moving, so electrodes are moving, there is a contact problem between the electrode and the skin surface, there is electromagnetic noise, and there are ECG artifacts. So a lot of noise gets added. So definitely filtering is a very important process in whichever way, whether we are going for deep learning or we are going directly or we are going the way we went, like feature extraction, then dimensionality reduction, and then we are fed it to the classifier. So this is a very common wavelet denoising equation. I won't go much into it, but the steps are wavelet decomposition, thresholding detail coefficients, and then reconstruction. So here what we have tried to do, we have gone to decomposition level 4. This is a very common, I'm sure you must have covered it in some of these sessions you might have taken. So actually we need to experiment with a lot of wavelet functions. And it is normally said that whatever wavelet basis function is similar to the signal, that wavelet you can select. But as I showed you, the signal is very random in nature. So we have experimented with a lot of wavelets. And then we have found that, as we go further, we found that, some particular simulets, some particular wavelets are giving us better results. So I won't go much into this, but yeah, there are threshold selection rules. So a lot of research work we have done on the threshold selection rule. So I just go into this bit quickly. So Birch-Massard algorithm that we have used, which is given inbuilt also in MATLAB, which can be easily used. And we found that our Birch-Massard algorithm worked best for us. So once we selected the pre-processing and this task and got our denoised EMG, then we have gone to this level dependent signal thresholding that we use. We have gone for feature extraction. So now in this feature extraction technique, existing time domain features that we found, they are not capable. So definitely we had to make combinations, we had to improvise, we had to find some new features. And that is what gave rise to a new feature, which we called as RSSQ, that is root sum of square, which we added to the existing wavelet packet transform energy. And then we got a good result for feature extraction. But as you can understand that when we are doing this and creating our, you can say the feature extractors, the dimension and the size of our features was very, very huge. So the huge problem that we faced was how do we reduce this dimension and then give it for the classification. So here you can see that there are a lot of features like frequency information, number of zero crossing, slope sign change, and previous to that, mean absolute value, integrated absolute value, waveform length, root mean square, and autoregressive coefficients. So with all of these, so what we found that with our feature, that RSSQ, we could identify that there was a difference in the amplitude levels of these 10 classes, that movements, finger movements, which we had taken for classification. So we did find that this new feature gave us some additional information regarding the amplitude of these classes, these finger movements. And these are normal quality parameters, which are maximum class separability features, robustness, computational complexity. And when we use this combinations, as we can see many graphs here. So we can see that we created sets of these features. So these features that we have created, set 1, set 2, set 3. So we have tried to, and then we have used SVM for classification, LDA, linear discriminant analysis. We also used K nearest neighbor. So with the help of these different features and the feature sets that we use, okay, so we found that our feature RSSQ did give us some good values with all these three classifiers. These are existing classifiers, QDA, SVM, KNN, and we started classifying our features and found that our features RSSQ and MAV, they perform equally well with SVM classifier. And some other conclusions we have drawn, that ZC performs worst, like that. So as normal in a research thesis or research, we have found out all of these and definitely found that SVM and QDA, they give similar accuracy. But then we decided to go, because we were not getting very high or good accuracy, we decided to go for time frequency analysis. And in this case, as you can see, there is this wavelet packet decomposition. So in this case, as in the previous case, we saw that we were only taking the approximate coefficients at each level. Here at each level, we are now decomposing both the high frequency components as well as the low frequency components. And that way, we have created these frequency bands, 500, 500 to 1000. As I told you, from 0 to around 4000, we have created these bands and extracted and done the decomposition of our signal. So in this case, what has happened is signal space is divided into lower resolution at each decomposition level. And for WPT decomposition, a smaller decomposition level gives poor resolution for effective feature extraction, whereas a larger depth increases computational complexity. So we have to balance the computational complexity and the resolution that we get. So we have selected, of course, a lot of study has gone behind this, studying from papers, extracting what depth we should go to, because some have used 5, some have used, many levels have been used. So we have stuck to a decomposition level of depth of 4. So the empirical selection of Simlet 5 as mother wavelet, we produced 31 coefficients in total from 4 decomposition levels. Okay, so the wavelet we have calculated, and then again we have done the feature set formation. So this is a way to go ahead. I mean, in case we are following the machine learning approach, in which we extract the features and give it to machine learning algorithms. We're directly not going for the deep learning in this case. So that experimentation we have just started, and we are trying to see if we can actually obtain this, because of the lack of huge database for us to test. So here you can see feature sets 1, 2, 3. So we have combined like ZC with waveform length, IAV with MAV, then RMS, then SSC. So different features have been combined together. And also this wavelet packet transform feature, we have kept it as a separate feature, this also, because we found that once we gave this to our classifier, there was a lot of improvement with the help of only the WPT feature addition. So what happened here was, we have the features, we have so many movements and a lot of database in this case, and then multiplying that to each one is 31 features for each segment of around 250 milliseconds. So it was a huge data for us to classify. So it did come, we used this WPT, we used the normal LDA, SVM, these classifiers, but all the parameters improved, but at the cost of additional computation time and complexity. So we began to think, actually what happened was, we began to think how we can reduce this without affecting our information. So we were searching for these dimensionality reduction, and it happened that we found that a different type of filtering that's called sparse filtering. It has been applied for feature extraction in images and videos. Because existing techniques of all of us would be knowing, many of us here in the audience must have used PCA, ICA, they have used such techniques already. But we found that sparse filtering, we thought that why not apply sparse filtering? And this is where actually our work began in greater depth and also gave us the SCI publication. So what does filtering do? It does not discard any information, but gives compact representation of the information. Sparse filtering protects the structural representation of data by preserving mutual information between original and learned features by entropy maximization. So actually there is a lot of work which is going on now currently, a lot of interest has generated in sparse filtering. I would like to tell you that there is an entirely different field of sensing the biomedical signals, which is called as compressive sensing, where actually at the time of sensing itself, you can apply this sparse filtering, which means by the time you are collecting the data from the electrodes, that time itself you can put a filter. When you are collected, you have done some little bit of signal processing, you can apply the sparse filter. So actually we found these kind of papers were available. So we applied that to EMG signal, but we found that it was not working. We were just not getting the classification once we began to do the compressive sensing for our particular case, where we were taking EMG signal of the transradial pattern, transradial. So in that case, we applied this after the feature extraction. So this is our contribution, and this is where the you can say the creativity of our work is lying. So what is SF? I would like to spend some time on this sparse filtering, being probably a newer concept even for me and maybe for the audience. Sparse filtering is an unsupervised feature learning algorithm that optimizes the cost function, which is sparsity of L2 normalized features. L2 norm is being used. The sparsity optimization is achieved by following properties of the feature distribution matrix. So what is population sparsity? So that is, each example is represented by a few active non-zero features. Now this is the concept, that you have very few active non-zero features. Then what is the second concept here? That is lifetime sparsity. So what is that? That there are sparse features across examples. So each feature is activated for only a small subset of examples, which means that each row in the feature matrix will have few non-zero elements. So there is a difference between population sparsity and lifetime sparsity. So population sparsity means sparse features per example. Lifetime sparsity means sparse features are active, a small subset of that features is active. So it can separate the classes very easily. And then there is a concept of high dispersal, uniform activity distribution. That means the features in all rows should be equally active, which means even though there are non-zero elements, but the features in the rows are equally or uniformly distributed. Now, these are the concepts behind the sparse filtering. So, if you can see, how do we apply the sparse filtering? Concept-wise, of course, there is a lot of study and a lot of mathematics has gone into this sparse filtering. This paper that for sparse filtering we have used is from Stanford University, and this is available on the internet. This paper is freely available on the internet. So what it does is, see, we have this feature set, okay, where X we have. So we have this feature set. As you can see, it's bit of distributed like this. Okay. Then we have the sparse filtering, in which what we do, first we multiply a weight matrix to transpose of that weight matrix to our feature X to get a new matrix which is called feature matrix. To our information, the training set Xi, we multiply a matrix transpose of the weight matrix and obtain a feature matrix. Now, what this feature matrix does is, I'll tell you what happens is, actually, it's like a nonlinear function. We have to multiply it by a nonlinear function so that sparsity gets introduced in the function. Okay, so the sparse, otherwise the features are not sparse. As if you see the features, they will be having values for all the rows and all the columns. Very few zero elements will be there. So the first step in sparse filtering is to make your data sparse. So that is, you multiply it by a nonlinear function, and then there are two more steps. Because now that we have multiplied and changed the values, we need to do a column-wise normalization, L2 normalization. Then we do a row-wise normalization, and we continue to do this in the iteration. And then we compute the objective function. So see what happens is, here there is F, that is, we have created the matrix. Then this is the column-wise normalization. And when we do the row-wise normalization, when we apply this in two steps, then the whole of the data, as you can see, now this is pink, this data, right? So you can start from this figure, the first figure. So it was all distributed like this. It's difficult for us to separate it. Okay, here if you see, after the first step, yeah, there are some changes in this data. And then what happens is, when we do both the steps, the data begins to fall on a unit circle and is separated. So we can easily separate the classes, and also this is computationally very, very effective. Okay, and this minimization is minimize HW by the standard functions which are available, that is LBFGS, that is Broyden, Fletcher, Goldbach, and Quasi-Newton optimization. So now what happened was, we have done up to this point, we have tried to separate the classes. So in this case, now we needed to, what we did was, we made the pairs with the sparse filtering. We also checked our data classification, our classes to be identified accurately with the help of QDA, which is a general form of LDS. So we also used a discriminant analysis, and we used many other methods like SVM and KNN. Okay. And most of the classifiers, they are using the MLP and all, but the basic problem there is you have to tune many parameters. But when you are using sparse filtering, you don't need to tune any feature, except you need to decide how many features you want this data to be converted into. So for our classes were 10, so we have taken first as our number of features we want are 10, and you should group these 10 features. So let's see, we designed a very robust, fast, and computationally simple classifier with adding to our sparse filter. So this is the crux of all our work, like how did we do this classification? So we have done this sparse filtering with QDA, we have used sparse filtering with KNN, we have used sparse filtering with SVM. To compare our work with the existing techniques, we have used PCA with QDA, PCA with KNN, and PCA with SVM. And as I told you that we have used feature set extraction, which is WPT4, we have used pre-processing. So all this work needs to be done before we fed our signals for the final classifier, which was a combination of this sparse plus the existing method. So if we compare now all our results, so as you can see, definitely the signal is non-stationary. So our time domain features really don't give a very good information and do not are not able to classify very properly. Then auto-regressive features also that we used, they were not very good, not at all up to the mark that we were looking for, because a person who wants to use, we want something above 95%, because later we can do some more work and we can try to do a post processing and make sure that the person gets the accurate finger movement or the accurate hand movement. So as you can see, the time frequency feature, which is WPT feature, it gave us, along with SF and QDA, along with SF and SVM, and along with the KNN, all these three, it gave us almost, this one has given us, SF has given with QDA 99% accuracy. So this is what we were looking for, and this is what we have achieved in this work. And SF plus KNN, that is 96.54%. Actually, there is one more way of identifying the features, which is T-SNE distribution. And this is given in the paper by Lawrence Wender M. et al. And this is a very interesting method to actually, it's also an unsupervised learning, and it can help us to find out which features that we actually want to use and which features are useful for us. So for these 15 class problem that we have given the input to, we found the WPT features, you can see that out of these all 6 graphs, if we can just start from say time domain features. So a lot of features are vectors are overlapping. It's really difficult to give them a visualization. So PCA also does a similar thing, but we are not able to visualize very well with PCA. So compared to that, this distribution, T-distributed stochastic neighbor, this is also inbuilt function in MATLAB. This showed us very clearly what actually WPT, why WPT was working best for us. And along with sparse, it reduced the computation time a lot. So the average classification accuracy for different number of reduced features, what sparse allows us, what I want to tell you is, like, it's like few to many. The concept is few to many and many to few. So from many features, we can go to few features. From few features, we can go to many. It's not always that we want to reduce. Sometimes we do check with the higher number of feature vectors also, higher number of feature points also, if we can extract some important thing. So here, if you can see, we have done this experimentation. So definitely around 10, you can say we got stable values for our system. So eight features also we have used, 9 features also we have used. Around 10, we got the best result for our sparse filtering. Means after making the matrix sparse, we have extracted only 10 features. And then we are able to distinguish between these movements. So we have applied that to SVM, then to QDA and SFKN, and as I told you earlier. So nearly constant results. Definitely we got better results with QDA and with SVM. So between SF and PCA, if I can tell you what is the comparison, you can also see that for yourself here in this, that accuracy increased much more with SF. means more accurate representation of the classes was given by the sparse filter compared to PCA, which is very standardized method. But as you know, PCA was invented, or PCA was, you can say, discovered as a mathematical data analysis tool in the year 1933. And sparse filtering and TSNE, they have come much later. So definitely some more, you can say, qualities, or you can say the mathematical analysis has been done to find a faster solution to the problem. And if I can go for the time complexity also, for PCA it is n square d, uncorrelated LDA also it is n square d, but when you go for sparse, it is 2nd, where n is the number of samples and d is the dimension size. So it really reduces our time complexity, and the aim with which we went that, yeah, we want a faster thing for a person to realize between the time the signal is taken and the activity is performed. We want very less time to be spent. And definitely for training, yeah, these are the different times. Of course, this depends on the hardware that we use. So on the laptop, this work was done. So it's in seconds. We can go for mainframe, or we can go for faster processors and can get lesser time. So here I would like to give a brief about the future work, because that is very important. This was what I have presented as our work over the last 5 years that we have been doing is now at the culmination. And finally, we could get a SCI publication out of this work on sparse filtering. So what is the future work that some of our researchers, I'm sure if some senior professors are here who would like to give some problems to their students, or researchers themselves are present, so we can, or you can give this to your students. So I thought that let me spend some more time here, that is study and analyze amputee data more closely for feature extraction and classification point of view. So definitely we need to collect more data. We need to start this process of going to the hospital, or maybe actually tie up with the hospital for getting some more data on the amputees. Then what we have shown you all the pictures, they were with the wired EMG data. So now you can consider high density wireless EMG sensor data, and we can apply deep learning algorithms, which you might have already studied. Actually, this sparse filtering also works in some deep learning neural networks also. So we can combine that algorithms. We can combine these two algorithms. Then study the effect of, means exactly not going as a feature extraction directly after pre-processing. We can apply the sparsity to our data and then give it for deep learning algorithms. This is the other thought that I thought I would share here. Then we can study different effects of limb position, force levels on classification performance, because ultimately our aim is to improve the quality of life of that person. So it gets affected by many things. Our work is at a very preliminary stage. So actually implementation and development of a prosthetic limb will be a very challenging and a very interesting problem to take. Then we can develop very more robust, generalized, and computer application which can be used with any SEMG dataset. So ours may be, because as I told you, it varies with the dataset. Somewhat it has varied with the dataset. When you have 10 classes, when you had a amputee dataset, yes, a lot of noise got added with the amputee dataset. So definitely we would like to develop more robust and generalized application. And this is our publication in Sadhana, in which we have recognized, we have given the work of the sparse filtering of wavelet packet coefficients, as I just explained to you. And these are all the references. I would briefly like to actually discuss some of this work, that is Rami Kushaba's work, which we have used a lot, which we have taken you can say inspiration from, and he has given databases on his website. So you can go and check on the website and you can easily get this database. Then for sparse filtering, we have a very good paper, which is, I told you, NAD, this paper. This NGAIMJ, this is from sparse filtering advances in neural information processing systems. Actually, what sparse filtering does is it emulates our thinking, how our brain works. Our brain will try to take out the things which we can separate easily first, and then we will go into the deep details. So this is what the sparse filtering algorithm does, and actually it is like our brain processing. So that is why it is so fast. So these are the two specific references. I would like the researchers and teachers who have come here, and definitely other references are also available, and a lot of study that we have taken on wavelet functions and wavelet denoising. So actually, this is all in my presentation for today. Yeah. So this is from my side. We can have any discussion. If you...
Okay, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Paithani.
Yes.
So I have few questions already answered in session. The one is, can we use sparse filter for EMG?
Yes. Please repeat your question.
Sorry, can we use sparse filter to EEG also?
Yes. Yes. Actually, I would like to inform you that we have started working on EEG signals, and we want to. I'm not very sure. I cannot say 100%, but definitely, because this is the concept. It is like how our brain is working, right? So EEG signals are able to give us a clear indication or a direction of the work to our muscles. So I'm sure it
Yes.
will work. Yes, we are now trying to combine this EEG with our EMG. So it is possible. Yes, it's a good start,
The
madam.
another question is related with stability of EMG. So just with the small motion or minute motion of the body, the EMG signal gets changed.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so how we can
Definitely,
proceed
those
for
are, yeah,
AI?
yeah. Actually, ma'am, definitely, I'm sure that probably when we apply sparse and we are going towards a deep neural networks, we might be able to find out patterns in a easier way, though it will be computationally more expensive. But the question which you have asked is that, yeah, the motion artifact. So that is like they create noise. So it's like if we have to improve our robustness through better noise, or you can say the pre-processing kind of a thing. So it does affect definitely, but the database which we had was noisy, but our which had all these noise, motion noise. Some people, even if they are sitting at a place and we are trying to measure the signals, so still there are movements. People are moving here and there. So we are able to find out. We are able to classify.
Okay. Thank
But
you, ma'am.
definitely where we fail is this point only, because noise has to be, there is ECG noise, there is movement noise. So it has to be removed. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, what type of variety of diagnosis we can go with EMG? We can do with EMG.
As such, actually, we are trying to see if we can work for the paralytic patients. So we are currently in that mode that are we able to identify some movements? See, we are able to identify the movements. But what happens is, see, actually, if a person is amputee, something gets, some nerves will be not working properly. Some nerves and will be closed. Are you getting me? Some nerves will not be proper in that case. So we have to club it with another signal. So we are thinking of adding EEG to it. So as such, disease or this identification, it's another direction. We haven't worked on disease identification, but we are trying to see if we can help the paralytic patients also in this case.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So this was the questions. So with this, we are at the end of question answer session.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, questions are over from the participants, ma'am. So with
Okay.
this, I conclude the question answer session. Thank you very much, ma'am, for accepting the invitation. Thank you very much, ma'am, on behalf of Rajeshri Shahu College of Engineering. Thank you for sharing your valuable information about your research work. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
So we are declaring end of session. So participants are requested to join the tomorrow's session sharp at 9:50. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
पाठवली नाही का? Okay, attendance link is posted. It is request to participant. Please fill the attendance link first and then you can leave the session.